Now let's talk about the group. CEO of FMDQ Group, Onadele.Koko, has asked the Central Bank of Nigeria to communicate clearly and timely to the entire financial markets on what the new direction is for the country's foreign exchange market. On Friday, I sat down to this very lengthy conversation with Koko for his thoughts, not only on the FX market, but on Nigeria's pursuit of $1 trillion economy, lessons from the 2016 FX crisis, and his outlook over a 10-year horizon. This is the first part of our discussion. Take a listen.
The pillars of what to do, we can now talk about. First, you want to drive that size of economy. You want to drive huge transformation. You need to look at the building blocks. What sort of laws are going to be in place? What sort of regulation will be in place? What is the plan for the human capital that is going to drive that? So you're thinking of education, you're thinking of health, you're thinking of the state governments. Where are we with that configuration today? And I'm not talking about expenses for running the government. I'm talking about these states becoming economically viable. You're looking at the growth. Where is it going to come from? It's definitely not government or public. It's got to be private. So you're looking at a private sector-led economic revolution. We need jobs in this country. And if you want to do that, the education has to be private sector-led. The health sector is very important. Again, it's going to be by welfare programs because the state itself is challenged. But if you think of your human capital, you have to always think of education. You have to always think of health. Underpinning all this will be financial markets. What sort of liberalized financial markets are going to have? Because the capital to drive the sort of growth we're talking about, some of them are going to be come from the external sources. And if they're going to come from the external sources, foreign exchange market becomes extremely important. The other financial markets, commodities, will become extremely important. I mean, in essence, the vision is good, but do we have the economic plan? Are things well articulated? And once we clear that phase, execution needs to start. I think there's still a lot to do, but the agenda is good. You always have to start that way. Having a visionary leader, it's of utmost importance, but the discipline for execution is very critical.
In your opinion, you think the vision, $1 trillion target is good, but again, we need to work on the milestones to get to that $1 trillion US. And you said FX is very important here. When you look back at 2016, and we're just in 2024, starting the new year, in terms of the prevailing economic conditions around FX, do you see some similarities or differences?
Thank you. Again, fundamentally, there's a similarity, and it is about the philosophy of financial markets. Nigeria needs to understand that when some economic fundamentals change, exchange rate will change. You know, you're not going to change the way things work in the world and everywhere. And you have rational economic agents anyway. So in 2016, you had issues with the crude oil price dropping. Once that occurs in the economy that we have, you will expect depreciation of the naira. And the earlier you appreciate that is the way you actually then conserve reserves, because you don't want to keep selling at so low a rate. You're just wasting money. It doesn't work to have your crude oil price go down, the major source of earnings. The other agents with you in the market, start seeing you not taking the right decisions. And for them, it's better to quickly leave because they don't think you're doing the right thing.
Oh, great.
In 2020 with COVID,
yes,
at a point, crude oil price dropped to $9. And with COVID going on, we had issues with this philosophy again, where Nigeria thought, I've got to fix my exchange rate. You can't fix exchange rate. And I hope we've learned enough. that each time we do this, we get into trouble. So you have that fundamental issue with philosophy, and it got us into trouble. But 2016 problem and the scale of that problem, very different from the scale that we have today. But in terms of fixing, you're just going to come to the orthodox way to fix the problem.
But what makes it different?
The scale is different.
Yes.
If you look at the size of the market, one is different. If you look at the differential in exchange rates, alternative markets to, well, official, we don't know which one is official anymore because I went to buy a pen and the invoice was in dollars. The level of dollarization is unprecedented.
In the economy.
Is unprecedented.
Vis-a-vis 2016.
Yeah, when people want to give you invoices, they give you the dollar amounts today. That didn't happen in 2016 because no one trusts where to benchmark the Naira today. And I was told that some people are writing contracts already and the benchmark is Aboki FX. So that's
amazing.
That tells you that there's a bigger problem. You look at the level of inflation and where interest rate is. It's a problem because if you have inflation at 28% and your interest rates are low at single digit, you are encouraging the economic agents to take money out of Naira and put in dollars, especially when the dollar paper of Nigeria itself is higher than the local interest rates. So it's a more complex problem. We can fix it, but we just need to understand the problems and know the decisions to take. The interest rates today to curb the dollarization cannot be at this level, at the level we see today. They have to go higher.
I'm wondering if there are critical interventions that need to take place today that you think we can onboard in the current situation in which the country is grappling with FX liquidity, very volatile exchange rates at the moment. Talk to me about that.
Yeah, the word intervention is good, but let us appreciate the fact that in 2016, we probably had a bit of reserves. We don't even know the level of reserves we have today. So that helps, though, when you appreciate the situation. We have to look at the right FX market structure for this economy today. And it is one, and I think the central bank started that with June 14 circular last year, that says it's a willing buyer, willing seller market. People still talk about managed float. How do you want to have managed float when you don't have reserves to manage? For some time now, we have to let this thing float as much as possible. The regulation for the liberalized market needs to be out and for everybody to read. There's still about 17 circulars from the old ways and administrative controls in the market. No one has rescinded all these circulars. There's no price discovery today. If you ask anyone about the rate for the dollar Naira, you're going to get as many rates. That doesn't help any market. You also look at the backlog. There's still conversation about the backlog. This has gone on for too long. When you have a big issue like that in the market, you need to clear it as much as possible. Now, clearing it doesn't mean you have to provide the dollars because you might not have the dollars, but you have to think of creative ways, structures to help clean up the problem so we can move on. So you need to clean the backlog, get price discovery of some sort, so when everybody looks at, if I ask you for the alternative rate now, you tell me, 1,250, everyone knows it. If you go to the, so-called autonomous, foreign exchange market, the rates are everywhere. So that's going to be a problem. And that's a problem for those that are looking in to see if they can do stuff with the market. But what is the market today? The market is in the regulation that the central bank will release. People have to be able to read a single circular and say this is the Nigerian market.
All encompassing, all embracing.
Yeah, and I want to go to this market. Should I go or not is the decision. Interest rate is a factor.
Yes.
Look, the truth is at the moment, the first set of monies that will come into this market will be foreign portfolio investors' money. And if those foreign portfolio investments will come, they're going to look at an interest rate. And it has to be one that will attract them to come. they also look at risk management products because it is too speculative today when you move in this first stage into Nigeria. You may not get your dollars immediately you need it. So you need a hedge. All these things we have to put in the market. And for us to understand this is how market works. Now, the market had been broken for some years that you cannot rely on the market itself to provide the risk management products. This is probably the intervention that central bank can provide today to, come back with these non-deliverable forwards, price them at the level of current spot, not at any discount. So the play will be people selling dollars, invest in the paper, fixed income and hedge. If the investment matures and they can't take the funds out yet because the FX market is still liquid, at least the non-deliverable forward will hedge the capital. That capital protection is key. And over time, this happened in 2017 to 2020. We had the crisis, we built back a liquid market because the rates was allowed to move. The non-deliverable forwards were there. They were priced. At a point, I looked at the July non-deliverable forward of London and the non-deliverable forwards onshore in Nigeria. They were disclosed. Today, we don't even have this in the market anymore. So you need to design what will make things work here for this problem we have today. Knowing that central bank does not have that capacity at the moment. I mean, I hear of inflows, 2 billion, 3 billion coming in. You shouldn't even use those to clear backlog. Yeah, you have to think of how to leverage that. How about using $5 billion you have to buy 30-year zero coupon US treasuries? That takes you to about 15 billion. Then use that investment, 30-year, as collateral to borrow 15 billion. So you have to think of different ways.
Looking at the US Treasury, by the way, as one of the world's #1 asset class you can have as a central bank.
And once you have that collateral, and you then come to the market and say, I'd like to borrow $15 billion, which I'm using to securitize some problems I have. Yeah. And people say, what's the collateral? Oh, there's a 30-year investment maturing. This was how the Brady bonds was done many years back. Yes, so this sort of structures, we need to think of the cocktail of products that some investors today may not want to take the risk of the market, but they'll be willing to give the top banks dollars and collect Naira securities. So those sort of swaps and repos, and they have to be registered. And they're going to think of risk. We have to appreciate that people are rational investors, because if the Naira securities with them have to be used to buy FX at some point, in case whoever they gave dollars to is unable to buy, they need something like a CCI, not of CCI of today, but then. So we need to register those repos, those swaps. And if there's a default, it can translate to, CCS. There's so many things we have to think of doing. And Nigerians are sitting on dollars. A lot of Nigerians are dollarized. And they took the right decisions. So when people talk about, foreign portfolio investors are hot money, I tell them that Nigerians' capital, monies they've saved, are hotter than FPI's money. Because most people have dollarized. How are you going to encourage them to sell to the market? You have to encourage them to come to the market with some investment that they see at 20-something level, and with the promise that if you're going to go back to dollars someday, you'll be able to do that. And then they relax and start helping everybody. But the way it is today, something has to be done. A program has to be released, and everyone to believe in the program. But people take rational decisions. A lot of Nigerians have put their dollars in euro bonds. They're earning 11, 12%. They're fine with it. Would they be interested in earning 25, 30% on the Naira? Yes. Would they do that without a hedge? No. So you give them a paper, you give them a hedge, then they will help you. But we need to,
to galvanize it.
This market needs to be brought back to life. Without the FX market, which is the nerve center, we're going to struggle on $1 trillion GDP. We're going to.
But again, we can discuss FX exchange rate without interest rates. The government is looking at a better exchange rate, but also wants a lower interest rate at the single-digit interest rate at the same time. So these are kind of a Siamese twins.
Any government will like low interest rate for the people, right? But that is looking at one side of it. Do you want to? That coin has another side. There are pensioners that what they do is to invest their money. Why would they be earning low interest rate today when inflation is 28? And I think government needs to stop talking about interest rate, because that is the purview of the central bank. Low interest rate will not work at the moment. It will not help to attract inflows into the country. It doesn't help the federal government. You may think for my debt service, I need low interest rate, but there are other things we can do to address that. The problem is Nigeria does not even have any stabilization fund at the moment. So the private sector needs to think of the future and tomorrow in creating an economic stabilization fund, such that decisions like this, the federal government may want low interest rates for a debt service, but the market is not giving you low interest rates. So from the economic stabilization fund, we can assist government. It has gotten to that point. So the markets are always allowed to play out the allocation of capital.
Yes.
When you have the high interest rates, at some point they will moderate inflation. They will moderate dollarization. Today, if you do not, you can't offer Nigerians less than Eurobond interest rate and expect them, with the way Naira is dropping in the markets, to stay in Naira. And that is a bigger problem than for government managing. In the first place, the high exchange rate would help government at the moment.
Yes.
Because its revenue is much higher to balance the, whatever debt service cost it's pursuing. And government needs to look at its own expenditure as well. A lot of people have spoken to that. So in my mind, you're going to have the first wave of foreign portfolio investors to help you kickstart and revive the FX market before foreign direct investments will look into this market. And that's where things like infrastructure would have to come in. Again, infrastructure, government can no longer fund it. We need to just get realistic with concessions in this country, and you allow bankable projects to be handled with foreign capital, a massive one. You've got an economy of 250 million people. There's a market. But the market has to be effective. They must have strong demand, so they need jobs. The jobs cannot come until the companies thrive. The companies cannot thrive until infrastructure is in place. So if we don't start working hard on so many things, security, infrastructure, the security government will fund that. But infrastructure, I think the Nigerian government may not have the capacity to fund the sort of infrastructure that would take Nigeria to be, a first class nation. It's just gotten to that point. But other places we go, people think it's government that funded infrastructure, and it's not the government. The private sector funds this thing. What government needs to put is the enabling environment, handle security, put laws and regulations that are business friendly, and capital will go to where it is wanted. That want is first to attract it, and the second is to retain it.
Where is the place of debt in this entire conversation? About how we grow the economy, how we developed using infrastructure fund. What else needs to be done to manage our debts while we don't really sink further into debt situation?
Yes, both sides. If you're looking at debt, you're looking at leverage. And I spoke to the country itself today, doing some creative financing to use debt. You have to use debt. If you want your own personal market value to go up, you're going to use debt. Mortgages will be debt. Housing finance for Nigerians is debt. Now, when you get all those, everyone is borrowed, you think of prosperity of Nigerians, you then pull all this together to issue mortgage-backed securities. That is debt. Then when you securitize them, people outside can bring capital into your country. They will only do that if your FX market works. As they bring in capital, they repatriate, things are flowing. And that's why the design, we have to be serious about the design. So individuals need debts, for prosperity. The state governments need debt. They can't access the market because they've not done the right things. We have to insist on how things will play and to appreciate the role of debts. The federal government needs debt, but it doesn't mean you're going to be able to borrow, the ways and means, they have to fix that. There's a capacity to man's debt. I can't borrow 5 times my salary today. How am I going to pay back? So debt is good. It helps you improve your return on investment. It helps you to improve your market value. So debt has a place in this drive for prosperity. The banks cannot lend today because of the way the excess CRR and all those things are being managed. How are we going to have this growth if the banks do not have capacity to lend? That money creation, businesses will need to borrow. So debt has its place, and debt must, we must ensure that, they're thriving as well. The issue of interest rates is allocation of capital. At a point, interest rates will be high. At some point, it's price of money. It will be low. Today, banks hardly have capacity to lend. So that whole space, we have to look at it because banks must be able to lend to businesses to thrive. So yes, debt for individuals, for Nigerians, debt useful for businesses, debt useful for state government. Even federal government should do, debts, but you have to be disciplined with it. What are you using the debts for?
Onadele.Koko, the group CEO at FMDQ. That's the first part of that interview. We got the second installment for you here. So keep your eyes here on the Rise Exchange tomorrow. Tuesday, we'll bring you the concluding parts. Onadele.Koko has a whole lot more to talk about the FX market and, of course, Nigeria's loop back into FSS 2020 that's faltered so far. What's the 10-year horizon? We have all that in the second part of that interview.